Hello and welcome to another OLLO Live podcast session distributed by the Headliner magazine UK. In this one we have two really cool guests, Lawrence Biancardi, a UK-based mixing and mastering engineer who is also a tutor at the ACM Guildford. And on the other side we'll have Adam Moseley, his mentor. And Adam is a renowned engineer, worked with Roxette, U2, the list is very extensive. And he was, and still is to an extent, a mentor to Lawrence. So we'll be exploring the roles of educators in a modern audio industry when, everything is available online. Hello to you guys.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm very excited to do this with you guys, especially when we have such a master engineer as Adam Moseley is, working with The Cure, Kale, Keys, Rush, U2. I mean, the list goes on. That's pretty impressive. And then we have, the product of his will to give back to the community. We have Lawrence here, a student. And I'm very eager to find out how you guys met and how you guys started, working in this kind of relationship, I guess. Is it a relationship between a mentor and a student?
Oh yeah,
maybe Adam, you can start.
Yeah, definitely. It should be a friendship. The things are better if you actually like each other and enjoy talking to each other. Yeah, I mean, the way I started out, I was never really taught anything. I'd got into a studio as a chef and builder, construction worker, and then it was Trident Studios in Soho in 1978. It was fiercely competitive, but I worked my way up through the ranks. But in that era, I got the opportunity. I was assisting Mike Stone and going from bringing him cups of tea to assisting him, and then engineering with him, engineering for him, mixing with him on major records. And Mike had worked on the first 5 Queen albums, as well as Asia and Journey, Escape album, and just so much work. And I mean, I was in complete awe of him. Obviously, I was a 20-year-old, but there was a friendship that I hadn't expected to have, and it was amazing. I wish I had understood then what I understood even just a few more years later. I would have been able to take much more from it, because everything was so new. But I really think I think mentoring is an incredibly important part of anyone's journey, and exactly as you said, like the giving back. When I started out, everyone was so fiercely competitive and people wouldn't talk to each other because you were all fighting for the same projects and so on. And now there's just such a joy between all of us from that time, that we're still here, that we're still making music, that we talk to each other, we really enjoy each other's successes. But yeah, in terms of the mentor role, it's music. We're making music. It should be fun. If it's not fun, you need to be doing something else. And if you're not enjoying the people that you're involved with or working with, then you have to change those people, because the work is hard enough, the job is hard enough. There's often enough pressure or budget or expectation on you without having to deal with personalities that you don't enjoy seeing every day.
So, Adam, you mentioned competitiveness right there with, back in the days. But I think, Lawrence, you would agree that it's very competitive today as well, right? So is there like a mind shift, or is it a culture shift that, mentorships is like more acceptable, or, maybe just mentors are more open than they were back in the days? How do you experience that, Lawrence?
Yeah, I mean, I think today you obviously have a lot of easy ways to connect with people, and even though Adam is in LA and I'm in the UK, we're able to connect regularly on Instagram and chat, so it's very easy in that way. And there are other producers and other engineers that I speak to too, who I'm able to connect with regularly, who I've never met, from other countries. And that's everything to me, really, because if I've ever got any questions with certain things, I can ask those people directly, whereas if we didn't have that, I think it'd be, I'd have to be working in a studio environment where I think it would be a bit trickier. You don't want to ask those questions that may make you seem. I mean, Adam, did you ever experience that, or have any other people? Yeah.
Absolutely. The wildest thing was that if you asked a question, it revealed that you didn't know something. To which normally the response would be from the producer or the engineer, if they weren't that friendly, would be, if you don't know how to do that, get me someone who does. So you would then have to make the phone call to call someone else in the building to come in and take your job, who'd give you a nice little shoulder bump as you walked out the door and probably out of the building, and someone else was in your seat. So it was a really strange environment. And I mean, we'll get to other things, but now it is so different. People's approach is different. There is so much information out there. Back then we were just meant to watch, listen, don't talk, and try and figure out what was going on. And that was generally how we learned.
So there is this phrase, the T-boy, right? So is this still alive? Adam, you have a studio, right? It's we can see your control room right there. And earlier when we started, you showed me around the recording room and piano room and so on. So do you still have T-boys?
Yeah, it's the best way to learn. We're set up in Silver Lake, and I had a big professional studio going in a separate building. It was called The Boat. We had George Martin's original Neve console from 1969 that Rupert Neve had built for him. It was beautiful. And although here it's called Runner rather than T-Boy, and the intern system in the US is very, very big as well. So either there I would have interns, I'd try them out. They would have to start as runners. They'd have to fetch food. They'd have to make tea, make sure the artist was being looked after. They'd have to clean the bathroom, which it would need to be done. And they knew that they were never being asked to do anything that I hadn't done myself, So even in the studio, which is now set up in my house, I had and have interns, and they become assistants. I've got a second rig in the room here. There's a second table. There's also a third rig in the house. But the assistant has his own table in my room to be editing, or can go and edit in the other one. But they start as an intern. If it works out, then they get hired to stay on and move on.
Yeah. So Lawrence, in your case, what was your journey, right? So,
I mean, technically, I worked at a studio, engineering, but I didn't. Luckily, I didn't go into the T-boy role. I went straight into engineering, which was quite amazing. I don't know how it happened, but it happened. But I also studied music production too. So I did a diploma and a degree in it. And while I was doing that, I was taking on small jobs through friends of friends and mutual friends, and just taking on what I could, saying I could do the job, even though I basically had very little experience, and that's half the battle, And then you have experience to take to the next person, and
that's
so
exactly that's a very solid and great point, right? Confidence in not just in music industry, anywhere, I guess. Right. So here's my question, since I have two very unique guests, right? So Lawrence, does Adam play any role in building your own confidence when you're, doing what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first properly met Adam, I came to his studio room and showed him a few tracks that I was working on. And at the time, I didn't really know much about mixing and mastering. And at the time, it wasn't essentially something I knew enough about to be interested in it. I was just trying to make tracks, thinking I was going to take over the world with my music. And then Adam, quite rightly, in a very nice and careful way, pointed out, I mean, they were probably terrible, but he points out, things that were important, and that actually did inspire me quite a lot to start taking notice of it and understanding about it. But I think someone first has to plant that seed and show you what these things are in order for you to even recognize them and develop an ear for it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but there's also another layer when it comes to, you know, relationships or just the role of an educator. You need to have the skill set, obviously. You need to have the technical skill set, but you also need to have the feel for, you know, for people skills, basically, right? You need to be able to convey your message, your thoughts and stuff like that. So, Adam, how did you approach that? Is that just something you have it in you since ever, or did you maybe struggle with it a little bit as you progressed and find your own learning path to?
Yeah, when I started out, I mean, I got into this incredible studio when I was 20 years old. You know, I was just still a kid, really. And I was very shy, I was very quiet. But I realized pretty quickly the most important thing was don't screw up. And learn as much as you can and put as much effort as you can, because, as I said, it was very competitive as well. And I think one of the most important things for anyone trying to enter any business, but I think especially our world, is to be politely persistent. And it's really important. You know, I have people who bug me, you know, constantly with things, and sometimes it can be, you know, a bit abrupt or a bit rude. I've lived in the US for 25 years, but I'm still very British in terms of how to be polite. And then I've got other people, like with my students. Sometimes, you know, students will come to the class because they couldn't get in, and they'll turn up to the first class and ask if it's at all possible. If they do that, they're in, because that is the most important thing, is to want it enough to actually turn up. And others might just send me loads of emails but not show up, and they may not get in if it's too pushy. It's a fine balance, and how do you determine that? You just have to learn by trial and error.
But that kind of enters the maybe a little bit provocative question, right? What comes first? Is hard work really first, or is talent first? What's the story behind it? I mean, that's something that, you know, any show business will kind of struggle. You know, how much value do you give into a talent, and how much effort do you put into a hard work? And I'm sure, Adam, you've met students that were brilliant, but they didn't have the work ethic. And you probably had students that are, you know, really devoted, but they just couldn't cut it on a, you know, musical level, I guess. So how would you approach, or how did you approach kind of these situations? You know, how do you explain that in a polite way, as you mentioned before?
With that side of it, it's also the same with an artist, I'll say. You know, I know we're talking more about education, but with an artist, it's exactly the same. Some artists may not be that great, but they can write a good pop tune, and they think that they're the best thing ever. You know, other artists, sometimes it's their insecurities which push them to do better. And in that respect, you've really got to find the balance between confidence with ego and also enough self-checking to want to do better and to review. So in the artist thing, that's very relevant as well with the student. But I really believe that if someone wants to do something, they can learn. When I have a student or someone approach me to work with me or assist me, if I can normally tell in terms of reading them as a person, if I feel they've got the fire, and then I know that pretty much they can be taught anything and that they will want to learn anything. If they're not interested, they're not going to learn. They're not going to be attentive. I'm going to be working. I'm going to turn around. They're going to be on their phone, you know, looking at TikTok or something. And if that's the instance, if they're not interested enough to be invested and to be in the room and realize the opportunity, then boom, they're going to be gone, because there's plenty of people that do want to really just soak up every moment. So,
I'm sorry to interrupt. So, Lawrence, you decided to, go down this path of becoming audio producer, make a living by being in the audio industry. And I'm certain you've done a lot of research and you've had a massive amount of hours and, effort put into what's the English expression? Teaching yourself, learning by yourself. So is this something that you think can be like a massive differentiator between you and your peers who are competing for the same attention as you are?
Yeah, I think being curious is a positive, like a very big positive, because if you're curious and you have interest in something, I think you naturally put in hard work, and the work is smart, if you want to say, if you're determined and you enjoy something, you're going to spend countless hours doing it, and you're not going to really think, oh, someone owes me money for doing this, because it's what you enjoy, it's your passion, it's your hobby. So I think by having that attitude, you're probably doing the right thing, and two, you're probably going to do well at it because you're spending a lot of time naturally trying to find out those answers and improve yourself,
But there's a role for a mentor as well in this scenario, right? When, we go to school and we are not actually learning directly things there, but we are learning the methodology to basically learn as you go, right? Entering new words and new things. So I think Adam is probably somewhere in his career also trying to teach you guys not just the technical skills and music industry, but also how to progress through your career. Like I'm sure Adam now uses or understands, at least, or teaches probably Dolby Atmos and stuff like that, right? 20 years ago, that was not there. So, there is a progression that everybody has to go through in order to just stay relevant. So what is your role when it comes to, transferring this knowledge and understanding that tomorrow will be different than it is today to the young engineers like Lawrence?
I think the important thing to realize is that for anyone starting to make music or engineer or produce or mix or do mastering today, you've got to be aware of what came before, because everything is progression. Occasionally technology takes a huge leap. Sometimes it's just very small incrementally. And as you said, you have to stay current. You have to stay on top of things. When I started, technology meant learning how to turn the tape upside down and record things backwards, or how to compile vocals by spinning, by playing your 24 track, bouncing it to a 2-track, and then by hand playing it back in and punching into record and out record and slowly assembling. But that was mind blowing that you could do that. These days most people fall over when you tell them that's how we used to compile vocals. And then from about 1988, I was using Cubase for MIDI. I set up a MIDI studio in my home to save on budget, so I could be doing programming but not paying, very large amounts of money per day to sit there and just work on the string arrangement or something. And I was using Cubase on an Atari 1040 ST back in 1987-88, and worked on one of the biggest records I've ever worked on, which was done on an Atari, which was the Swedish band Roxette. So again, the technology is there. It's a tool that you apply, but you have to have the idea. And although there's loads and loads of softwares, and of course there are softwares which will write the song for you, at the moment, thankfully, it still needs human input and it needs human ideas. And the technology, until AI takes over, the technology is there to serve us, to help us achieve a goal. If you're doing a guitar overdub and you want a guitar, so then you think, well, is it acoustic, is it electric? If it's acoustic, is it steel string, is it nylon string? If it's electric, is it a solid body Telecaster, or is it a Gretsch semi-hollow? You make these decisions. They're also like technology decisions, because it's the technology of the instrument has changed with a different sound. So you have to have the idea, you have to have the awareness, you have to have the gut instinct to go for what feels right, and then you apply the technology. But it's very important to stay, as I said, I've started in days when there were no plugins, no digital reverbs. We used to use the elevator shaft for a reverb, or the staircase. The stairwell we would use for reverb spaces. We had one echo plate. So being aware of the old stuff, I think, enriches anyone's experience in any art form. But then you want to put your own stamp on it, develop your own instincts and your own style, but constantly listen, constantly absorb, and experiment. That is one of the most important things. But also realizing that the technology is there to serve us and to be applied in achieving the idea or the gut instinct that you have that hasn't come into an idea yet.
There's a nice twist to that, which is there is so much technology, but it's basically noise, right? We have a gazillion options in software especially, but even in hardware, there's, Adam, you have right there like probably 30 or 40 preamps, right? So that introduces like noise into your thought train. What are we going to use? Why are we going to use it? And so on. So there must be a balance between, the technology things, everything that is available, but it has to serve the idea. So Lawrence, when you are, building your own studio, getting the experience that Adam now has and probably can pick one of those preamps instantly and knowing why he did that, you have to build up to that. So how do you approach all this noise in the industry and selecting, the proper things for you?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it is trial and error. A lot of it is research, asking questions, trying out lots of things. I mean, luckily we're in that era where we have a lot of good hardware or software plug-in versions, right? So I've used a lot of UAD. Adam got me onto Plugin Alliance. Adam's actually cost me a lot of money, I think, but won't go into that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, it's right. I won't hold it against you. No, but if anything, it's improved me, right? So that's good. But yeah. So I mean, trying out all these plugins of hardware replicas. I've tried out a lot of different things. I've been in some studios. I've researched, watched countless videos. There's so much content online on it. Once you learn them, use them, try them, eventually I think you have to make a lot of errors and kind of go, well, I put the Poltec plugin on everything. Why didn't it sound better? Because it cost this amount of money. Why didn't it sound better? And then you start learning the nuances. Maybe it's softening some of the transients, and the song needs to be a bit sharper sounding for it to cut through. And you start realizing, okay, that didn't work. I won't do it on that style song. And then after a while, you do get a grasp, on certain things. But I think I'm very lucky to have all these plugins and technology and be so exposed to it every day. Whereas I think maybe growing up in, maybe when I was younger, you would have experienced those hardware units in the studio, but you wouldn't be able to every day maybe load up 4 new hardware replicas and try it out and then compare them, A/B them, very quickly. So I guess that's a benefit. It's the, having all of that in a laptop, really.
There's one thing that Adam mentioned in the last chat, I think, which is what is still universal no matter, anything basically, is just you need to learn how to listen. Right? So it doesn't matter if it's a plugin or if it's whatever you're using. If it sounds good, then you're on the right path. If it sounds the way you want it to sound, right? So that's, again, something that I think is, you can come to this kind of conclusions on your own, but it brings value when Adam tells you this, right? Because you can trust him, and this is the bond, the relationship. Relationships only work when there is trust involved, right? So maybe one of the final questions. Adam is obviously making a living being an audio engineer. Lawrence, you're on that path, right? So what do you think is needed in order to survive in this messy music industry, to make a living being an audio producer or artist or whatever? It's tough. So what are your suggestions or advices, or maybe 1 or 2 steps that you see that a student would need to take in order to get far enough to actually do that for a living and hopefully enjoy it?
For me,
Let's start with you, Adam. Yeah, sure.
the I think the most important steps are realizing no one's going to come and knock on your door. No one's going to knock on the door and go, here's this fantastic opportunity that will serve you for the rest of your life. Every moment you have to create, which means you have to network. If you're starting out, you've got to go out and find bands. Don't expect that you're going to get paid at the beginning, which if you do things right, what you will get paid further down the journey. At the beginning, you just need to be working, and you need to be seen to be working. And I always use the analogy is you don't want to be a player sitting on the bench that no one can ever see what they can do. You want to be on the court. So you've got to behave honorably. You've got to constantly educate yourselves. Be the kind of person that people are going to enjoy working with. You have to win the trust of people. You can't say, trust me. If someone says, trust me, normally I'll walk out the room. So you have to earn that trust. You can only do that by gaining experience. You can only get experience by working. You can only be working if you're inventive and you're going out and you're finding artists and you're doing, nice deals. You're offering to mix a song for a little money. If they like it and they want to come back, then you'll get to do the rest. But the big thing is don't expect to start where you want to be at the end. Anyone that is currently successful and has managed to last a period of time has done so for all those above reasons. And I mean that also for yourself, change things up, do different things, learn. Music shouldn't be a factory production line where you just do the same thing. Experiment. The more education you get, the more aware you are of using your tools, whether they're plugins or hardware, the richer your knowledge base will be. So experiment. You can always have your safe go-to place that you can drop back to if what you're trying isn't the right route. But you have to constantly keep educating yourself. And I mean, Lawrence is an educator too, and I think it's just wonderful to be passing on and seeing Lawrence doing exactly the same thing because he has those personal traits.
So what were your main 2 or 3 steps that you did in order to, make it this far, Lawrence?
Okay, I think part of it is potentially building up a reputation. So everything Adam said, I think I totally agree with. And I think to add any more points to that would be building up some sort of reputation for a thing, being the go-to person for that thing. Obviously in audio you can do lots of different things. You could be in film, you could be mixing, mastering, or just engineering, or you could be making music, or be vocal tuning, being the go-to vocal tuning person. But wherever your reputation is, and that's having good relationships with people included, I think that will help you a lot. So people see you as that person and know to go to you as that person because you're the best at that thing. So I think partly that's it. And I built up a bit of a reputation as a mastering engineer, which I'm pretty much entirely self-taught with that. And that's been from doing it quite a lot and working with bands and artists and doing that for them. And then it's a bit of word of mouth. It takes a while. I haven't really spent money on marketing myself and all of that. But I really enjoy that process and have put a lot of time into it, and have been trying to make it work, through doing that. So I think that's what I'd probably say about that. Just keep going and expose yourself in a not a rude way, but just expose yourself online and show people that you're that person. You're the person they want to work with and want to exactly. You're a business at the end of the day. You want the reputation, and I think you've got to see yourself as a business if you want business, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Adam, Lawrence, thank you very much for joining me in this OLLO Chat podcast. which will be distributed by the Headliner magazine. So you'll see it on all major platforms and also on YouTube with the video as well. So you can also see the beautiful, what are those? The barefoot speakers, I guess. You both guys are running the same gear.
Yeah, I blame Adam.
Yeah,
this is part of the problem.
And we got the same headphones as well. Which, yeah, of course. Yeah, there's a few similar things we have in our rooms.
He's inspired my life.
Right, but and your choice of bean is yeah.
And I've tried to grow my hair out and everything. I just want to be Adam, really. That's it, you know.
Beautiful, guys. Thank you very much. Until the next time. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.